This horrific story happened 10 years ago, which was in regards to the deathly graveyard where numerous people met their fate. Keita, whom I met in secondary school that year, was a close friend of mine. After school, we decided to explore the graveyard where Keita often heard rumors about it. We both turned a deaf ear to all the rumors about so-called graves and danger in the woods. We played freely. We even took soil from the graves, rounded it up and threw it at each other for fun. It was not until late night that Keita suddenly caught a bad fever. His whole body was aching in cold sweat. Keita's grandma was extremely worried about him. Me and my grandma immediately came to visit him as we heard about his illness. Seeing Keita suffering from a terrible cold, my grandma recalled a story of a boy who was once in his shoes a couple of years ago after he played at that cemetery. She told me that because Keita was a panicky type, he would probably lose his soul, and only his relatives or ancestors could bring it back. Keita's grandma instantly asked my granny how to do it, and she then told us she should be the one to call Keita's soul back. Just for in case, my grandma told my dad to go with Keita's grandma. I sneaked after them to satisfy my curiosity. With a small torch, my dad and Keita's grandma slowly headed off to the abandoned graveyard. Although I had cold feet at first, I still followed them to see what was going to happen. The wood had a freezing wind and a dreary atmosphere that could make any nervous type of person faint. My dad was lighting the path while Keita's grandma consecutively knocked the brass on her hand to awake ravenous souls. Keita's grandma knocked it harder over time and shouted out Keita's name while she was walking towards the churchyard center. Then suddenly, the wind became stronger with a blare hiss. My grandmother assumed that if we called out to the lost soul loud enough, it could hear the relative's voice and follow them back home. I observed this in silence, even though it was terrifying to see Keita's grandma keep hitting the brass in order to entice his soul to follow them back. Surprisingly, Keita was able to get up and was eating away at food as we arrived back home. He ate the dumplings like a horse while consisting of a weird complexion and dribbling sweat. Keita's grandma was on cloud 9 to see a beloved grandson regain his self-conscious. She quickly embraced him. Nevertheless, Keita ignored his grandma and insisted on consuming the dumplings. The day after, seeing him in class, I instantly ran to his seat and asked whether he was feeling better. In response, Keita didn't even notice me as he consumed his meal. Regardless of my questions, Keita seemed not to acknowledge me and expressed unpleasantness on his face. During school lunch, Keita finished his meal and then surreptitiously stared at everybody taking out their lunch. Keita sat next to a boy in class. When he saw the boy's cake, his mouth started watering while gazing at the piece of cake. He could not contain his ravenous appetite. Keita rushed forwards, attempting to steal the cake. In response, his friend also tried to pull it back. He could not hold in his anger. The boy simultaneously cursed and hit Keita, but it was nonsense. Keita was not only unaffected by this, but also devoured the cake unapologetically. Despite being thrashed, Keita still minded his own business. Keita's strange behavior amazed his friends. When Keita almost finished eating, he was totally out of steam, lied down on the ground, gasped for breath, with eyes splashed in that of a red blood color. After a while, he continued to crawl on the floor to eat scattered pieces of cake in the presence of everyone. Non-stop. To everyone's amazement, he went to every table in class and collected all the lunch boxes around. It was like Keita had been starving for years. He ate relentlessly. In order to address the problem, the principal called Keita's grandma to take him back home. Keita's grandma was extremely freaked out. She took him to the hospital right after. However, the doctor claimed Keita was in a perfectly healthy condition. Not within a day, the rumors had it that a hungry ghost in the wasteland had been mistakenly called instead of Keita's soul. Even right next door, two women gossiped about Keita's story and decided to ostracize him for good. Keita's grandma lost her temper and scolded them for backbiting her beloved grandson in order to protect him. All of them contemptuously isolated Keita's grandma, thus pushing her to stranded misery. She tried to stay strong and persistently took care of Keita. She also suspected that she had called the wrong soul. As yet, she hadn't known what to do next. Undoubtedly, Keita gradually became monstrous. He ate unprocessed foods. What's worse, he even stole a live chicken to drink its blood and eat it raw. At this point, she knew for sure that she had mistakenly called the hungry demonic spirit at that graveyard, so she had to unwillingly lock him up as the last resort. In the known of Keita's situation, I brought him food every day. Inside the locker, Keita huddled pitifully in the corner of a dark room where a little light crept in. All the questions kept popping up in my head. Was that miserable entity possessing Keita? I assured myself that perhaps he was just sick and he would be on the mend soon. But the gore in my sight as Keita turned around frightened the life out of me. He was feasting on a live rat. He glanced at me with bloodshot eyes. I was haunted with a sense of horror. A couple of days later, my grandma told me to visit Keita. She wanted to test holy water in order to expel the demon from his body. Thinking of the recent horrors, I didn't want to stay, but couldn't help but do anything else but go to Keita's home with my grandma as she wished it. As soon as we walked through Keita's door, we suddenly smelled a strong stench which was stinking from inside. Promptly we continued to see what was going on. We navigated the house from top to bottom. It was covered with bloodstains, tracked into a blood-red path that led to a corner. I had a bad feeling as we followed the stains. The deeper we went into the house, the more unsavory the smell got. I could not stand the stinky stench of blood, plus the disgusting smell of a decomposing corpse. My head kept spinning around with an overwhelming feeling of throwing up. Next, the terrifying scene was beyond all my imagination. Keita was bent over devouring something. He was tearing his grandma apart while devouring her. Her eyes were still open but blinded white, which gave me goosebumps. Keita ignored our presence. He chewed on his grandmother's arm, ripped every piece of meat into his mouth with eyes full of barbarism. He was devouring his own grandma. That's when I realized that the creature over there was no longer Keita. It turned out to be a starving demon. I shouted out in panic. I couldn't stand the gore as my grandma fainted. All the food in the basket was scattered everywhere on the ground. Too afraid, I quickly rushed out, calling for help. The villagers quickly came to restrain Keita and locked him up in a closed room, tightly tying him up to a chair. Later on that terrible day, Keita was said to have passed away. Yet the information was still unclear. The rumors had it that Keita turned insane as he killed his own grandma. Others said that was because Keita's grandma had mistakenly called out a starving devil from the graveyard. The story has not met its conclusion and left me obsessing over it for the rest of my life.